Do you remember that viral trend where parents were cracking eggs on their children's heads? I remember watching those videos and having such mixed feelings because some of them were honestly sweet. Some children laughed. Some families clearly had that playful relationship where everyone understood the joke, and you could tell it was just a silly moment they were sharing together. But then there were other videos that felt different. And if you watched closely, you could almost see the exact second the child realized something didn't feel right. Their smile changed. They looked back at the adult they trusted. They paused for a second, almost like they were trying to figure out, wait, are we laughing together right now, or did I just become the joke? And honestly, that's the part I couldn't stop thinking about. Not the egg, not the mess, not even the trend itself. It was how quickly adults jumped in to explain why children shouldn't feel hurt instead of getting curious about why some of them did. Because we hear things like, it's just a joke, they need to toughen up, children are too sensitive now, and I get it. Most parents doing the trend weren't trying to hurt their children. But it opened the door to a much bigger conversation. How many moments do children experience differently than adults intended? How often do we focus so much on what we meant that we miss what they felt? Because sometimes the moments that shape children are not the big obvious ones. Sometimes they're the tiny moments we almost miss. And that's what we're talking about today. You ready? Let's go. Welcome back to Little Feet Big Guidance. I'm your host, the Nurture Navigator. After more than a decade working in the child development field, one thing I've learned over and over again is that the little things are usually the big things, right? The everyday tone, the jokes, the reactions, the comments we barely remember saying because to us, they were just a passing moment. But to children, those moments can become part of how they understand themselves, relationships, and the world around them. My goal here is simple: to take big-brained child development concepts and make them practical for everyday parenting and teaching. Because parenting and teaching don't happen in perfect conditions. They happen in the middle of busy mornings, loud classrooms, bedtime routines, mistakes, frustration, and real life. So we're not here for perfect parenting or perfect teaching. We're here for growth, awareness, and learning how to become safer guides for the children in front of us. Today, we're talking about what happens when adults hurt children without ever meaning to. You know what I think makes this conversation tricky? Most people listening to this are good adults. They love children. They care about children. Parents are trying their best. Teachers are showing up every day trying to pour into children. And that's why this conversation matters. Because we usually imagine hurt coming from people who don't care. But sometimes hurt comes from loving adults who simply never stopped to question something because it felt normal. And I think there are two places where this shows up. The first one is when we recognize something may sound harsh, but we defend it because we experienced it too. That's just how I talk. That's how I was raised. My parents were harder on me. My teachers embarrassed us and we survived. I turned out fine. And I want to say this with so much compassion because for a lot of adults, saying I turned out fine is not always about ignoring children's feelings. Sometimes it is about protecting their own. Because it is really hard to look back at your childhood and hold two truths at the same time. My parents loved me deeply, and some of the things I experienced may have hurt me. Both can exist. Good people can repeat harmful patterns. Loving parents can use tools they were handed. Wonderful teachers can carry approaches they learned from the adults before them. That's why this isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Because children are incredibly adaptable, and honestly, that is one of the most amazing things about them. But sometimes adults confuse adaptation with emotional health. A child stops crying and we think they're fine. A child stops arguing and we think they learned. A child stops telling us something bothers them and we think they got over it. But sometimes children don't stop because something stopped hurting. Sometimes they stop because they learned nobody was listening. And those are very different things. Marshall Rosenberg's work around communication connects so strongly here. He talked about how language can either build connection or create distance. And I think about this in everyday parenting and teaching moments. A child makes a mistake, one response says, "What's wrong with you? Why do you always do this?" Another says, "Okay, let's figure out what happened and what we can do differently next time." Both adults address the behavior, but only one protected the child's identity while correcting it. And children are not just learning what happens when I mess up, they're learning who am I when I mess up. Now, let's bring this back to humor. Because I know someone listening is probably thinking, okay, so now we can't even joke with children? No, please joke with children. Be silly, make funny memories, laugh together. Children need homes and classrooms filled with joy. The question is not, are we allowed to joke? The question is everyone part of the joy? Because developmentally, children process these moments differently depending on their age. A toddler or very young child does not have the ability to sit there and think, that joke crossed my boundary and made me uncomfortable. They are reading us. Young children look at our faces, our tone, our reactions to understand what is happening. Sometimes, little children laugh because everyone else is laughing. But laughter doesn't always mean understanding. Sometimes laughter means everyone else thinks this is okay, so I guess I should too. As children get into preschool and early elementary ages, something interesting happens. They develop a much stronger awareness of fairness. Anyone who spends time with this age group knows this. They will tell you immediately, that's not fair. That wasn't nice. You hurt their feelings. They are building their understanding of how people are supposed to treat one another. So imagine this. A child cracks an egg on another child's head at school. What would we say? Probably something like, hey, we don't do that. That wasn't respectful. So when adults do something similar and call it funny, children are also learning something about power. They're watching. Do rules about kindness apply to everyone? Older children understand another layer. They understand embarrassment. They understand social situations. They understand when they are included in a joke versus when they became the joke. And that is why some of those reactions look different. It wasn't about the egg. It was about dignity. And here's the part I think we sometimes forget. Children are not only learning how they deserve to be treated, they are learning how to treat other people. They are watching what adults do when they have more power. If adults show them, when someone is smaller than me, I can embarrass them as long as everyone laughs, that teaches something. But if adults show them, when someone feels uncomfortable, I notice, I care, I adjust, that teaches something too. Those lessons leave our homes. They walk into classrooms. They show up in friendships. They shape the way children respond when someone else says, I don't like that. And we've already talked about Gabor Mate's authenticity versus attachment in other episodes, so I won't go deep into that again. But something else from his work that really connects here is the idea that children are shaped by the emotional environment around them. Not just what happened, but what it felt like. A child can be provided for, loved, cared for, and still be impacted by repeating moments where they feel dismissed, embarrassed, or unheard. This is why intention is important, but it's not the whole story. I didn't mean it that way can be true, and that hurt them can also be true. Ellen G. White spoke about this long before many modern conversations around child development. She wrote often about the responsibility in adults in shaping children's hearts, not just controlling their behavior. And one thing she emphasized repeatedly was the importance of guiding children with both firmness and tenderness, because guidance was never meant to remove respect. She warned against harshness because harshness may get a quick response, but it can weaken our influence. And I think about that often, because sometimes adults believe if they fear me, they'll listen, and sometimes they will. But listening from fear and learning from connection are not the same. She also placed a lot of responsibility on the adult's self-control. And that matters because sometimes we ask children to manage emotions that we ourselves are struggling to manage. We say, watch your attitude, but we forget to check on our own tone. We say, be respectful, while forgetting we are modeling what respect looks like. Children learn from what we require, but they learn even more from what we demonstrate. Now, if you're listening and thinking, oh no, I've done this too, take that thought and meet it with compassion, because every adult has. Every parent has had that moment where they reacted too quickly. Every teacher has had a moment where they replayed later and thought, I wish I handled that differently. You are working with children while also working on yourself, and that is not always easy. The goal was never perfection. The goal is repair, because repair is one of the most powerful things we can model. Imagine a child hearing, hey, I thought we were joking together, but I realized it didn't feel that way for you. Or, I should have stopped when I noticed you weren't having fun. Or, I'm sorry, let me try again. That does not weaken your authority. It builds trust. Because someday that child will hurt someone too. They will make a joke that doesn't land. They will say something that comes out wrong. And what response do we want living inside them? relax, you're too sensitive, or I didn't realize I hurt you. Let me make it right. They learn that from us. This week, challenge of the week, pay attention to the little moments, the jokes, the comments, the quick reactions, and ask yourself, are we laughing together or is someone being laughed at? And if a child's face changes, their energy shifts, or they suddenly get quiet, pause, get curious. Because sometimes children tell us something hurt long before they have the words. Parents, teachers, maybe the egg trend was never really just about an egg. Maybe it was a little reminder to slow us down and notice the moments we usually rush past. The jokes, the reactions, the little comments, the everyday interactions happening in our homes and classrooms. Because those are the spaces where children are learning what kindness feels like, what respect feels like, what it looks like when someone makes a mistake and comes back to repair it. And remember, this isn't about taking the fun out of childhood. Please keep being silly, keep laughing, keep creating those funny memories children will talk about years from now. We're just learning how to bring connection and respect into those moments, because the goal was never to become perfect parents or perfect teachers. The goal is to keep growing into the adults our children need. Thank you for spending this time with me today on Little Feet Big Guidance. Keep nurturing, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.